If you think you're going to get a play-by-play with snarky commentary, or any commentary for that matter, with this movie, you're absolutely wrong. This movie just plain sucks. Look, I wasn't completely sure about Sony's insistence on doing a Spider-Man cinematic universe without, Spider-Man, though I will say I do believe that Venom could have reasonably worked on its own, and it did, and there's no shortage of source material to pull from for Venom. I would even reasonably argue that Morbius as a movie could have worked, memes aside. Yes, its Morbin time ended up being found in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt number 2, that recently, much to the OG Morbius's irritation. Yep, this was published this year. But memes aside, the man did have solo comics back in the day, so there is enough material to pull from. Madam Web doesn't exactly have the source material of Venom, much less Morbius. Here are all the solo series featuring Madam Web. Yes, this blank screen is exactly the amount of solo series she has ever had. She's never had one prior to this movie. She also hasn't been on a team book either. She's just a Spider-Man supporting character. Hell, her most well-known incarnation of her is from Spider-Man the Animated Series. In that series, she was an annoying reality warper who spoke in riddles to the point that Peter got annoyed with her constantly. At least she was well acted. Can't say the same for this Madam Web. Look, there's no hiding how much I hate this movie. It's not because of a lack of source material. They can just take that as a nice opportunity to be creative. We have plenty of iconic comic characters who were so good in their animated series that you honestly can't imagine comics without them. They were simply imported from the animated series to the comics, yet can we even think of them as anything but a genuine comic character? X-23 originated from the X-Men Evolution cartoon. She's not the only one. Firestar from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was made specifically for the cartoon because they could not use the Human Torch. Imagine if Sony took this opportunity to make Madam Web into an A-list hero with a good movie. In terms of antagonists, Ezekiel Sims is a man who meets his fate on the road taken to avoid it. He has this vision of 3 characters growing up and killing him, so he attempts to kill the girls before it leads to his death personally, and the girls ultimately end up becoming superheroes, and he ends up dying, meeting his fate on the road taken to avoid it. This is a rather simple premise for a villain. That's not to say it's a bad premise. We've been telling this story for literally thousands of years. The problem is that this movie executes everything incorrectly. You might ask, how is this even possible that they can even be so bad at it? First off, let's talk about the dialogue. Everyone says it's chock full of ADR. ADR is a useful tool. It's how all animes are dubbed. It's all how live-action musicals function as well. Live-action movies use ADR in order to make the sound quality more consistent and controlled. After all, a recording booth is a nice controlled environment for audio quality. Musical or not, you have plenty of problems to run into when you're filming in the middle of a city street. You can't exactly soundproof New York City, so that's why a sound booth is so much better and ADR is used. Of course, that's not the only use for ADR. You could use it to replace deleted scenes, you could use it to rewrite plot points, and honestly, rewriting plot points is what Madam Web's ADR felt more concerned about rather than having any consistency. Case in point, let's look at Ezekiel's dialogue. Obviously, I can't, show off the dialogue, but there are entire times where his mouth is not moving, yet sound is coming out. It's not just Ezekiel who has this problem. These guys from the Aranyas tribe, they're getting ADR'd pretty hard, but they try to hide it by cutting the scene up, and they're using all these blur shots and editing effects. It's like that during reshoots, the whole team went, yeah, this movie's a mess, the studio can't do this all in post, so we're going to film it in such a way that it makes the ADR look easier. But instead, their attempts to hide it just made it stick out like a sore thumb. There's plenty of characters, mostly Ezekiel, being off-screen and monologuing. Then there are the shots with people with their mouths obscured and they're lingering on the back of heads in order to hide the fact that they're just dumping more ADR, ADR, ADR into this. It's like the studio executives wanted reshoots so badly, only for them to go lose control of the reshoots, either because of actor availability or because of, okay, we haven't even gotten our stuff together by the time the reshoots began. Let's just make it easy on the ADR. But honestly, enough with the dialogue. There's this whole effect, I think it's called like a spinning effect, where they just spin the shot. I get that spiders walk on walls and ceilings, but they really didn't need to do this many spinning shots. One could reasonably play a drinking game with the spinning shots. While I'm at it, please don't play a drinking game while watching this movie with the spinning shots. It's going to be harmful to your health in more ways than one. Possibly 50. The three girls that Cassie kidnaps to prevent Ezekiel from killing them, they are underdeveloped as hell. It honestly doesn't help that their lines sound completely phoned in. I guess that's more acceptable, mainly because everyone's lines feel phoned in. Dakota Johnson feels so contemptuous with every line that she legitimately has emotion in, whereas other lines, it's pretty clear that she's just phoning it in. Then again, these three girls are also phoning it in. Their attempts at conveying emotion through like physical movement really does not work at all. It all feels just as stilted and awkward as the rest of this movie. So back to Cassie and her leaving the girls. She doesn't do this just once. No, no, no. She does this multiple times, each with increasing levels of redundancy. Yes, I understand the concept of dramatic irony, but there comes a point where you have to focus less on the dramatic irony or make the dramatic irony actually interesting and have a punch and not just simply be redundant because you don't have an unlimited budget. Why is Cassie? One of the things I question is why the whole detour to the Peruvian Amazonia? Just why? Because all the stuff we learn in the Amazon, it's really just the whole beginning of the movie except just slightly more detailed. Like, with the amount of detail we get in there, it's like just 1, maybe 2% more than what we knew at the beginning of the movie, which it's not anything earth shaking. It doesn't justify this whole scene at all. Hell, Ezekiel's curse isn't even that interesting enough to justify this detour either. Are you people sick of my ranting and just want the part where I just say something to make this movie better? Well, besides fixing the editing, and believe me, that has to be fixed, I honestly question why we couldn't have just done something like a Terminator film. Instead of the Terminator and a robot apocalyptic future, just have Ezekiel come back in time. What's his goal? Kill these three girls. Ezekiel is simply a slasher villain who so desperately wants to avert his dark fate of dying at the hands of these three girls that all he simply needs to do is be threatening. And honestly, he has to be shown to be more implacable than the Terminator, because I think he gets hit with a car multiple times, and honestly, the first time you see it, it's kinda great, but when you see him get hit with an ambulance, it's not as great. You really should change it up a bit. You don't need more for him. Just have him be that slasher villain. That's enough of this toxic waste pit. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.